Hello and welcome to the Real Streets of Crime YouTube channel. Today we will be talking about Stephen Lydiate, a notorious gangster from Salford. A man who police suspect may have been involved in the murder of Paul Massey was previously locked in a gang war involving biblical violence. I can now reveal that Lydiate was once at the center of ferocious gang war in which men were shot, kidnapped, tortured and threatened with rape. Some of the violence was on a similar scale to the recent A-Team gang war, which led up to the murders of Massey and Kinsella. And I can also reveal how Stephen Boyle's older brother Michael was recruited by Lydiate to take part in the terror campaign. There is no suggestion that Michael Boyle was involved in the murders of Massey or Kinsella. At one point during the spate of attacks, some of the Lydiate gang hid from police at an old people's home in Salford. Heavily armed, the criminals forced the manager to let them stay at Lawrence Lowry Court for a week. In an attempt to blend in, the criminals dressed up as old women and wore wigs. But they were forced to move on from the council-run center after one of their guns accidentally went off. Lydiate was still recovering from the gun attack at the time and was not one of the men who hid out at the home. When police later raided the home, in the Swinton area of Salford, they found a cache of weapons stored in the ceiling above the communal lounge. The mayhem began in April 1999 when gunmen burst into a busy Salford pub teeming with drinkers watching Manchester United play Leeds. Just after red striker Dwight York missed a golden chance to score, the gunmen opened fire. As drinkers in the Ship Inn dropped their pints and dived for cover, Lydiate was riddled with bullets. A bulletproof vest saved his life on the day, but he still suffered serious injuries. He later checked himself out of hospital while there was still a bullet lodged in his groin and began plotting a bloody revenge. He set about putting together a gang to find out who ordered the attempt on his life. Michael Boyle, Stephen Boyle's older brother, was recruited along with 5 other men. The gang was armed with submachine guns, handguns and machetes. They were ordered to kidnap and torture several targets and force them to reveal the identity of the people suspected of being behind the attempt on Lydiate's life. During the first act of violence, the gang arrived at a man's house in Salford. The front door was blown open with a shotgun. Their victim was shot in the leg, dragged out of his home and put in the boot of a waiting car. He was taken to a flat where the gangsters put a gun in his mouth and threatened to pull the trigger. The gang also told him they had abducted his wife and child and planned for his partner to be raped. The victim was later released. The Lydiate gang were also sent to another address in Salford. A man who was asleep on a sofa was confronted by 4 men dressed in black wearing balaclavas. 2 of the gangsters were armed with submachine guns, fitted with silencers. He tried to escape but was hit over the head. He was then shot in each leg, and the thugs threatened to shoot his girlfriend if he did not quiet him down. The victim was handcuffed and put into a white Suzuki van, which had been bought a few days earlier under a false name. The van was driven off but stopped after a mile or so, and the victim was moved into a car. The van was then torched with a petrol bomb. The victim was taken to Hickey Farm, where he was put into a trailer. Guns were put into his mouth and he was hit on the head with a machete. The gang then demanded that he tell them where a suspect lived. A man then arrived who said he was going to rape him, but refused to go ahead with the sex attack because the victim was bleeding so heavily. A stick was prodded into the open wound in one of his legs, and salt was poured into his wounds. The kidnapped victim later managed to escape after he put sleeping tablets in his captor's drink. He then staggered out and alerted a group of builders who were working nearby. The third man was attacked by the gang. They stabbed him in the leg and foot and then dragged him into a backyard. A gun was put in his mouth and one of the gangsters said, "Shall we murder him?" Threats were made against his family and he was asked to tell them where a suspect lived. In a fourth incident, the Lydiate gang targeted a man as he drove through Salford with his partner and young children. A terrifying car chase ensued until the gangsters caught up with the BMW. The man was shot in the leg in front of his terrified family. At one point during the terror campaign, some of the gang hid out at an old people's home in Salford. Preston Crown Court heard that police later arrested the Lydiate gang during a number of raids across Salford. Around 30 officers were sent to one address used by the men. A 3-month trial took place in 2000 when prosecutors described the violence as biblical. Lydiate, then of Vestry Drive in Salford, was found guilty of conspiracy to murder and conspiracy to kidnap. He was jailed for 22 years. Michael Boyle, then of Winton Road in Salford, was convicted of conspiracy to murder, conspiracy to kidnap, false imprisonment, wounding and 2 firearms offenses. He was jailed for 15 years. Sentencing the gang, Judge Peter Openshaw QC said. In a city where shootings have become common, this is a case set apart by its savagery and brutality. Kinsella acted as a pallbearer and launched a brutal graveside attack on Stephen Lydiate, the brother of Paul Massey's partner, Louise Lydiate, and another significant Salford gangster. He had acid thrown on him and was battered with put poles, the wooden beams the coffin is placed on before it is lowered into the ground. Lydiate was arrested and interviewed by police as a person of interest in connection with the murder of Massey. He refused to cooperate. He has now been recalled to jail as he was out on license from prison for arranging the kidnap and torture of several men he believed had shot him in a Salford pub. Lydiate has never been charged with any offense relating to Massey's murder. Thanks for joining me today. For more stories from the real streets of crime, please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you.